jolly good.
Hello boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Clank Zoka and welcome to another My Thoughts On. Today I'll be talking about the new Spongebob animated film that just came to Netflix yesterday, the Spongebob movie Sponge on the Run, the third film in the Spongebob film trilogy. This was originally supposed to come out in May, but due to you-know-what, it got delayed. Apparently it came out in Canada first, which is weird. I didn't know SpongeBob was that popular in Canada. And now it's on Netflix. It's weird. Anyways, obviously without talking about the film, I should explain what I think of SpongeBob and the two films as well. I think SpongeBob's a good cartoon. It's kind of overrated in my opinion, but still good. The two films I really enjoy. The first film I think is great. Second film's pretty good. And now we have this one, which this is actually, I think, the last film. I was going to say, this is actually the film dedicated to the creator, the late Stephen Hillenburg. Which on one hand, that's a very nice gesture, but on the other, what else can you do with SpongeBob? And the answer to that is more than you would expect. This is directed by Tim Hill, who is responsible for the notorious Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Garfield sequel, and Hop. So, I don't know. I'm sure the guy is nice, but the films he's directed seem like generic film crap for kids. However, this is a very special occasion. Not only is he actually one of the writers for the show, and I believe he worked on the two films as well, but he's actually the director and the writer for this film. And, let's get into it. So the film is about SpongeBob, obviously. And his friends, of course, Mr. Krabs, Patrick, Squidward, Sandy, and technically Plankton. And in one day, listen to this, SpongeBob's pet Gary actually gets snail napped. Snail napped. And it's actually Plankton's doing because he's the one who wants to steal, what else, the Krabby Patty's secret formula. So this king named King Poseidon, who's voiced by Matt Barry, again I might add, he wants the snail so he can look handsome and nice. And SpongeBob and Patrick go on this quest to just save him from the king, from the lost city of Atlantic City. While that's going on, Mr. Krabs, Sandy, and Squidward actually go out to find him. And although Plankton screwed up, he goes along with them. And although the characters are pretty much just being themselves, they do miss him and they go and find him. And then SpongeBob and Patrick have to try and get Gary back. And that's it. That's literally the story. And I'll be very honest, the storytelling in the first film was actually good for a SpongeBob film. The second one I thought was weird, but it did it in a very well executed way that's random and wacky. That's kind of what made me really enjoy the first two films in terms of their good storytelling. Here, however, it's pretty much what you're going to get, a simple story with random scenarios. Like SpongeBob and Patrick get a lift from this robot that Sandy built named Otto, who's voiced by Aquafina. They come across this tumbleweed named Sage, who's played by Keanu Reeves, and then they come face to face with the king himself, and Tiffany Haddish is also there as well. And Danny Trejo's there as well, and freaking Snoop Dogg. Okay, I'll be very honest. It's SpongeBob, and I love random nonsense, but this is close to being one of the most modern celebrity infused a film with a celebrity in it. How do I put this? The film is kind of just being your run of the mill average kids film. And while it's not doing anything horrible, it's just like it's SpongeBob. It's going to be a very nonsensical yet very predictable film. Is there anything good to come out of this? I think so. The humour still remains in that SpongeBob way, and about 40, maybe 50% did actually make me laugh, even though I wouldn't say it's like one of the funnier films of that entire year, I think. Um, of this year, really, but it's got classic SpongeBob humour, and some of it can work, and the others are a bit modern. Like they mention Skype and FaceTime, which is like, yeah, this is one of those films. And sometimes the joke can sometimes be a little too repeated and a little too far-fetched. Like there is a gag in the film where Patrick is just being dumb, and he is a very amusing character, but it's like we've seen this so many times. It's honestly the most. It's rather dull and just gets boring really quickly. Like the characters are still just being themselves, which is fine because I think they're pretty likable-ish and funny characters. But it's like we've seen this so many times in the show, and even in frickin' in the two movies as well. It's at this point we know what to expect, and while it doesn't really feel like a movie, it just feels like if actually it feels like a TV special and then a film. It doesn't feel like a very cinematic or fun film. Even the first two felt very cinematic. This film, it really does feel like a TV movie, and it's rather debatable with. Oh, excuse me. And it's rather debatable whether it's the story or the animation. It really just feels like a TV movie. But the thing that does make this film kind of worth it is actually the heart, which is okay. On one hand, it's a bit confusing because one, it's about SpongeBob and what his friends think about him, and on the other, it's about Gary. And I thought the whole film was about getting his pet back, and now it's all about SpongeBob and how he's not actually a crook, which I know has happened before. However, with all those flaws and with all the predictability and the very rather mediocre humor, the third act is actually when the film gets kind of better. There is literally a scene where his friend actually they talk to the court, so they talk to the king and all the people at the city, and they tell him why they tell all of them why SpongeBob is a good friend and he's not really a crook. And while I do think the flashback scenes and when they're telling them that SpongeBob is actually a friend with a big heart, I thought on one hand it really worked because that's kind of what made SpongeBob fun, is that it had heart and good humour. On the other side, though, I mean, these characters have been kind of dicks to him in the show before, so it doesn't really feel justified in a way, but I'm not really going to butcher it or anything, but the heart does work and it feels genuine, mostly anyways. And this film, also, I'm sick of this cliche. Although sometimes I don't mind it, it's the whole character goes up to a character, they seem mad at first, but then they're like, oh, I like it, I'm happy, and it's like, wait, you're not mad the whole time? It's that kind of film. It's like, and then what happens with Kim Poseidon is really confusing because he wants Gary's to keep him young because he has what's it called? A wrinkle. Has like a wrinkle, and it's like he needs Gary to keep him young. I'm like, well, does it matter? And I will get to the characters in a minute because the characters are, at least with the new ones, are not as fleshed out as the ones in the sequel in the first two films. But I'll get to them in a minute. So, despite having a good heart and a decent amount of humour and some pretty fun and entertaining scenes, unfortunately the storytelling just doesn't feel like what it should be. A SpongeBob film with a good story and good amount of weirdness, and the weirdness does work, but the storytelling just feels kind of been there, done that. But is it well executed? Sort of. The first act is really when the film does get better, when they tell us why SpongeBob has a good heart, and sometimes it can work, but others it's like, yeah, we've seen this before, we know what to expect. So I'll give the film effort for trying, but it didn't really try hard enough to do anything new or different. Animation. The best thing to come out of this film is the animation, and I do have to give these films absolute credit for at least going with a different animation style. The first film sticked with its 2D animation, the second film sticks with both the 2D and the live action stuff in 3D. With this one, it's kind of like a blend between 3D and 2D. Sort of like Peanuts movie meet Spider-Verse. And the animation here is really fantastic. I love how this film looks. I love the textures, I like how 2D it looks with a nice 3D element to it. It really does look like a really colourful and just really stylish film. The character animation and designs, although some of them do look a bit off-putting, like Sandy, the rest, like Mr. Krabs and even freaking Squidward, look pretty good. SpongeBob and Patrick just look like themselves, but they do look quite nice. Gary looks pretty good. They all look great, like I said, except for Sandy, who looks a bit too off-putting, I imagine. The backgrounds do capture the feel of the show very well, and when they go to the city, it's really well done. It's actually pretty damn good. It's very colourful. I love the speed of the animation. It's very unpredictable. There are sharp turns. There's some great facial expressions, as always. It's a legit, really well animated film from Paramount Animation, I think. They're the same team that did Wonder Park, and while I do think that film visually is well done, this is way better. There's a style to it, and some might say this could be considered as groundbreaking. I guess, but it's not as groundbreaking as Spider-Verse. That film visually is way better, but this at least has a nice style that I can see this. I can see Nickelodeon movies use this style again for another film with its like 2D, but it has a 3D style to it as well, and it does look good. It can really work if you put your mind to it, really. Although some characters like King Poseidon do look a bit too 3D. Because the rest of the characters, like Mr. Krabs, when you look at him, it's like, he is 2D, but he does have that... Actually, the film does remind... It does... I would not be surprised if this is, like, the case, but this film, I assume this film takes a lot of influence from Klaus. You know, the 2019 animated film from last year with J.K. Simmons. This film, at times, does kind of remind me of that a little bit. And while I'm not really a fan of the whole film that's taking a lot of influence from other films. I mean, it's a good thing, but sometimes the animation is the only thing that keeps it from being terrible than anything else. However, the animation here actually works, and it doesn't try to copy everything that Klaus does. It's really well animated, it's just stylish and colourful. If they went with the same 2D animation, I would have been fine, but this is like a step up. Say what you want about the film, but the animation is the biggest sea sponge there is. And it's visually the best thing in this film, and genuinely speaking, it's the best thing in the film for, well, ever. Genuinely speaking, the animation is really good. Characters and acting. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. The characters don't really change all that much, and I know they're... It's freaking Spongebob, I know, but Spongebob is still just himself, although I will admit he can get a little bit unlikable. Patrick, he's even more annoying than I imagined. The first two films I thought he was charming, helpful and funny. Here he does have a few laughs, but it's like he doesn't do much at all. He's kind of pointless. You could say the same for Mr. Krabs, Squidward, Sandy and Plankton, although Plankton is technically the one who started all this. They're kind of pointless, but they're in the film because they're from SpongeBob. They're in the show, so it makes sense. And they do kind of play a good role in the film, at least, but they don't do much, except for sobbing for SpongeBob. I mean, all of them are still likable and just being themselves, which is fine, but it's like nothing is new or different. Even the new characters are not that memorable. Otto's pretty funny. He's a pretty funny robot. There's this host who's voiced by Tiffany Haddish, and I think her name is also Tiffany. There's Sage, that tumbleweed. There's El Diablo, who's played by Danny Trejo, who coincidentally was in last year's Dora and the Lost City of Gold. And then there's King Poseidon. I never thought I'd say this, but the new characters are actually not that interesting at all. Except for Otto. She's a pretty funny character. King Poseidon, although does get a few laughs thanks to Matt Barry's pretty decent performance, everyone else are just forgettable. Or just very, very forgettable. El Diablo is pretty threatening. Sage is weird. He's just kind of there to give the main heroes guidance. And the host is just, you know. Oh, and Snoop Dogg's in it as well for no apparent reason. That's what I've got to say. I think the characters are probably the most forgettable part about the film. Again, the main characters are just themselves, and it's fine. But everyone else, the new characters, I don't know, they just never stood out. However, I will give the film this. The voice acting, and I will say the acting in general, is really good. Tom Kenny and all them guys, they do a great job as always. As for the new actors, technically new characters, Matt Barry is amazing as always, although I don't know why they brought him back again. Not that I have anything against him at all. He's a really good actor, but why couldn't they go with someone else? Like, seriously. What about David Mitchell or something? Is Stephen Hillenburg a fan of Matt Barry? Dunno. Awkwafina's pretty good as always. Tiffany Haddish as well. Keanu Reeves, although as an actor I think he's good, I also think he's very overrated as well. But in this film he's good, but distractingly good, because he's literally just himself in a tumbleweed, and it's very distracting. Snoop Dogg is just there because he's a freaking celebrity. Danny Trejo's pretty funny. Who else was in it? I can't remember. Yeah, that's it. The old characters are just fine. The new characters really don't offer that much and are just forgettable, except for Otto. Otto is pretty funny. But thanks to some decent good voice acting and decent acting, the characters are, I guess, snailishly fun. Oh, and by the way, Gary has no purpose in this film at all. He's just there as an object for SpongeBob to get, and even I don't know. Gary's fine, I guess, but he's just there, and the film's not even entirely about SpongeBob getting him back. I don't know. On a side note, the film's score is by Hans Zimmer and Steve Musser. I can't pronounce his second name. Hang on, let me just look it up, because I don't want to get his name wrong, actually. It's by Steve Mazzaro and Hans Zimmer, who coincidentally both did the score for Boss Baby, which in many ways is kind of similar to this. The score, while it's not one of Hans Zimmer's best works, I think is it's alright. It's decent. Uh, Honestly, at this point, this is pretty much what you're going to get. It's a freaking SpongeBob movie. What else did you expect? SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run, is easily the worst out of all the SpongeBob films. It's not terrible, but it's not exactly good enough to be entertaining. It has really good animation, it has some decent humor, and the wacky weirdness is very creative. It's very entertaining. The old characters, are pretty good. Also, it's pretty funny. The voice acting and the acting is passable. Well, the voice acting is very good. The acting genuinely is passable, and the music is nice, I suppose. If you like SpongeBob a lot, you will pretty much enjoy the heck out of this film. If you don't, you're going to lose interest. I'd say this is more for fans. I say this is more for fans of SpongeBob, really. If you do not know SpongeBob at all, you might be put off by this film. You might be confused, maybe. If you have kids, they'll enjoy the hell out of it, but I don't really recommend it that much. Again, not bad, not good, just kind of decent. I'm going to give it a 6.8 out of 10. I will admit it's better than Trolls World Tour and Scoob, easily. However, it's really not as amazing as the most recent Wolf Walkers. Nowhere close to that, or even freaking Onward. I say it's kind of in between. I think in terms of Nickelodeon movies, I think it's I think it's better than like the Rugrats movie. Well, Rugrats Go Wild and the first film, but it's not as good as Rango or even Wonder Park. I thought was better. Again, it was a decent film, but just not good or bad. It's something I'm pretty much going to forget about, except for the animation. The animation is really wonderful. So yeah, that's Sponge on the Run. I did really want to like it, but unfortunately, it just falls into that very run-of-the-mill, typical kids animated film. Not bad, not good, just eh. So yeah, there you go. And we had to wait for what? 6 months for this? I mean, I know it's a SpongeBob film, but what else did we expect? So yeah, next up, I'm gonna try and do Borat 1 and 2 next week. So if you have watched Sponge on the Run on Netflix, what do you think about it? Is it good, bad, decent? Do you want to see it? Let me know below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. And until next time, SpongeBob! That's my terrible Patrick Star impression. I can try and do Gary. Meow. That's good enough, I suppose.